Hey, good Thursday morning, everybody. Welcome to the Volquest Mailbag Podcast. I'm Eric Kane with Grant Ramey, Rob Lewis, and Austin Price. As always, a big time thank you to our friends for making all this possible. It's Exterior Home Solutions. These summer storms might be wreaking havoc to your home, or maybe you're just looking for an upgrade. Maybe you're looking for an addition. They do roofing, siding, windows, repairs, all that and more. You can contact them at 865-524-5888 for a free estimate, or you can visit them online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. They've been local and trusted since 1999. All right, boys, we got a lot of questions to get into. We'll start with MaxSalsman. Recruiting defensively has been really good the past 3 cycles. Do you guys think that by 2025 we'll be deeper defensively than we've been since the early 2000s, especially at defensive line and linebacker?
I think you already are. I think this defense is really, really deep. And what they've been able to do in the portal is, cherry pick some guys, Grant, that have allowed them to, fill in some holes where maybe they weren't as deep. And those guys will be able to come in and I think will play a significant role in this football team. So I think you're already seeing that. I think the defensive side of the ball has probably been the most impressive thing they've done in recruiting since Josh Heupel's gotten here.
I think the first part of the question kind of answers the second part of the question. If you're having that kind of success, it's going to add up and it's going to show itself. And I think I agree with AP that they're already there. It feels like on the defensive line. It feels like they're getting there at linebacker. I think a lot of it hinges on what this secondary looks like and how they're kind of starting over there and kind of, I guess, how they progress this season, how quickly they can make strides and, what they look like by the end of the year. But it feels like I kind of agree with what AP said, that they're kind of already there at some points of the defense and they're getting there in other stages of the defense.
And this is stating the obvious, but quarterbacks and wide receivers and everything, they're sexy, but think about the front 7 guys Alabama and Georgia and LSU have sent to the league in the last 5-10 years versus the kind of, how many dudes like that Tennessee's had. Like how many, Dallas Baker's a really good player, but he's not, a legendary player. But Alabama has a guy like that every year. Georgia has a guy like that every year. When's the last? Tennessee's not had a guy like. They've got one now in James Pierce, but that's to me. Again, I think a lot of positions are important, but man, the front 7s in the SEC, like the top 2 or 3 teams, are just stacked every year.
Let's go to Dirk Digler. Do y'all know if any players or coaches have had subscriptions to Volquest and actually participated on the Journal's Quarters? I can see Rick Barnes sitting in his office late night reading some of these posts and laughing his butt off.
Rick Barnes doesn't even have Twitter. It's not on Volquest.
I would say the majority is no, but AP, there have been some people around the program at different programs who have subscriptions, but as far as coaches getting on the GQ and participating, I would say no.
And Butch Jones is actually who VFF is. Butch. No, there have been plenty of parents, but as far as players, no. Now, do players have their parents log in and can see stuff? Yes, but more so as recruits. Once they get to campus, they're not paying attention to that stuff.
And I can't stress to you how little coaches could care about what's on a message board, or at least the ones I dealt with.
Rob could write a column tonight about Rick Barnes needing to be fired, and you could go to the complex in 2 weeks and Rick wouldn't have any clue that it was written. No clue. That's how
I co-sign.
Out of touch or out of unplugged he is, I guess, from whatever everybody's talking about.
I would love it if Tennessee embraced the whole, is it Jimmy Fallon mean, or is it Jimmy Fallon or
Jimmy Kimmel?
Jimmy Kimmel mean tweets.
Yeah.
I would love it if they used the message boards post with the General's Quarters, GoVols 24/7, whoever else. That would be fantastic if they repeated some of the stuff, especially game day threads.
Now, I tell you, Coach Barnes he'd get a kick out of that, wouldn't he, Grant?
Yes.
He would love that. He would laugh until he cried.
We can stream. We can have the game going on one side of the stream, and then just the game thread going on the other, just as it's happening. Now, Rob, you were here when this happened. I know Hubs didn't on the podcast, but hasn't Hubs mentioned several times that he knew Ed Orgeron was coming here because he got a Volquest subscription before he?
Yes.
I don't know that that didn't mean he was necessarily coming here, but yes, we saw where he had signed up, and it was so funny over your Coach O. If you're listening, thank you, because apparently he kept forgetting his password because he ended up with like 4 active subscriptions.
All right, let's move on to Fulmer's. I'm not saying the other part of that handle like I did last time. Outside of Peyton Lewis, why do you think we've not been able to sign or land a high 5-star rated running back? I would think big time running backs would want to play in this offense. What do you think is keeping us from landing that caliber of back?
I just think the position has been devalued so much. Like, there's not been a great class of backs. You look at Peyton Lewis, a year ago at this time, everybody's like, oh, Peyton Lewis, who cares? And then all of a sudden he rockets up the rankings with a strong senior year. Who's to say that one of these other guys aren't going to do that? Like, if Tennessee can flip DeJuan Morris, I'm telling you, DeJuan Morris can run for 2,000 yards easily at Oakland. I mean, the he's filthy. Justin Baker, let's see what kind of senior year he has. So let it play out. It's kind of like the whole recruiting class. I mean, everybody wanted instant gratification right after these visits. And if Tennessee goes on the run that I think they're capable of making, and they're able to land, all these guys, and they get Faison Brandon, top 26 quarterback, August 3rd, and they get David Sanders on August 17th, who cares if when they committed?
Well, and AP, what I just say from evaluations, and I know not every 3 star is Jalen Wright, but I mean, they just took it. I mean, the guy that was their back was he not the highest ratchet running back in the SEC out of the SEC this year?
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, I know he wasn't a 5-star, but I mean, who in the SEC would you have traded him for last year?
I wouldn't trade him for anybody. That's for sure. Fire Brown 1229 Grant. Do we see a 5 wideout set being all the quality wide receivers we have now? I would say no on the norm for that.
I would say no too, because I feel like what we've seen the last 3 years is what they're most comfortable with, regardless of what the personnel looks like. I don't know. AP might have a better answer for that one than I do.
The biggest question is, do they play 5 or 6 receivers? Not a 5 set, but 5 or 6.
Right. And now that's different. Sorry.
I mean, will they go? So you're saying they play more receivers, not a 4 receiver set?
The question was like an empty set, like 5 wide.
Yeah. I don't see that. I keep waiting on them to go with a 4 receiver set though, and actually not use a tight end in that role, just because I think at some point you have to tweak a few things, right? Like it's kind of like when Chief installed the Prowler package. It's just a little wrinkle here and there, and Josh Heupel is so good at the wrinkles and the misdirection and hiding guys and those type of things. I'm surprised you haven't seen it. I think this is the deepest receiving core that Tennessee has had since Josh Heupel's been here. So we'll see, what happens. But I would lean towards you see the same old. But at some point, I would love to see them just throw a different wrinkle at somebody.
Yeah, I think we get so locked into whoever's out there for that drive is out there for that drive. I mean, I understand tempo, I get it. But say you've got a 6-7 play drive, a lengthy drive for Tennessee, getting close to 10. Pick up a first down, run a receiver, I'll put a tight end back in there. You can. I mean, it's not set in stone, even though you're running the tempo. But again, the reason why they play a tight end all the time is because when you do sub, it allows the defense to sub as well. SrevelsVols 77. What's your gut feelings on Josh Petty? Any optimism there? What would your percentage be, AP?
Josh Petty has not done a whole lot of talking, so I don't have a great gut feel for Josh Petty. I would probably lean not Tennessee, but again, the kid did grow up a Tennessee fan. The dad is a Tennessee fan, so I don't think you can discount the Vols. I think, they're still in it. They're still having conversations and dialogue. But again, kid's not done very much talking, and so thus I just don't have a great feel.
SrevelsVols 69. Each season thus far in the Heupel era, the team has lost to an opponent that they were favored to beat. 2021 Purdue, 22 South Carolina, 2023 Florida. Which team that the Vols should be favored in this season to beat is a game that they most likely are to drop? I would say Florida at home, right? Tennessee will be favored to win that game, and it's Florida. Yeah,
but I mean, the way 2022 went, it gives you confidence that they'll take care of business at home. The way they've played at home the last couple seasons, I read this question probably an hour ago, and I've been trying to think since then, who would be that team that they're going to be favored against? Maybe it's something later in the season. I don't know. I don't have a specific one that just jumps off the page that I would throw out there without it being something crazy.
Well, they'll be favored to beat NC State. And so I would probably just tell you NC State. If you're talking about a conference game, I would probably tell you Arkansas. And I don't think Arkansas is going to be just some world beater team that, resurrects themselves from, the depths last year. But, it is hard to win on the road. So, I would still say NC State, though, out of all those.
Second question, is this staff targeting any more 2025 recruits for the defensive line, or will they focus on the portal to rebuild what they're losing?
Yeah, I think most of the focus will be on the portal, but I mean, if you get the right collection of guys here in the next, 30 days, I mean, my question, with the whole David Sanders thing is, if you get David Sanders in the boat, he's not going to have an impact on the class in terms of uncommitted guys because most of the class is built. But does he have an impact on anybody that's committed elsewhere that would give Tennessee another look? Like an Isaiah Gibson, so to speak. I mean, is that possible? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question, but I do wonder, can he have an impact on a guy that's committed elsewhere?
Let's go to UptownVol. Be honest, what do you guys think of this year's smoky gray uniforms? Rob, what do you think?
I don't have a strong opinion on any of the uniforms. I just don't get out of shape one way or another. I mean, I would stick with orange and white if I had my, particulars, but I don't get all worked up. And I understand the kids love them. I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, the kids, the players, they love that stuff.
I personally think they're way better than last year's,
Yep.
and I think they're just fine. I mean, they're not bad and they're not great. I thought it was interesting that Tennessee's social media accounts put out that video of the guys playing and the team coming out with the black jerseys with orange helmets.
Yeah,
I
that
thought
looked
that
awful.
was because you're almost promoting that combination, so to speak.
Yeah, that looked awful.
I thought that was interesting.
I was going to say, here's how you judge a uniform. What are the recruiting official visit pictures a year from now? And it feels like for the last couple of years since they brought the dark mode jersey, introduced the dark mode jersey, that it's been a lot of the dark mode stuff. So I think that's the best alternate uniform. I don't have any problem with the smoky gray. I do agree that I think it's better than last year. I don't think it's a bad option to have either. I know traditionalists probably aren't huge fans of it, but if the kids like it, that's the demographic you're trying to reach.
I mean, listen, if Rick Barnes is coming around on the black jerseys, then 100%. It tells you all you need to know.
Feels like a lot of the fans don't like any of the gray jerseys here the last couple of years. I don't have a strong opinion on any of them, but if I had to rank them, I like 2022's and then this year's, and then I'm with you guys. I did not like last year's at all. I thought it looked horrible.
I think the biggest thing, Eric, is Tennessee didn't have an alternate uniform for years and years and years and years. So the gray was the first thing introduced. So people liked the gray, but then once they actually saw the black, minus the one game with Lane, which was kind of like, hey, let's just go down to Target and buy some jerseys and we'll screen them on. Once they actually introduced the real black jerseys and the black helmets and the black face masks and all that, I think that at that point, gray just kind of got shoved aside. It was like, gray, whatever. I love the blacks, right? And that's how most people are looking at it.
And I think it was also the original smoky gray Nike version from 20, whatever that was, 15, was kind of hard to top. That was a really good uniform. And it's interesting that you're trying to tweak it year over year in the smoky gray series, but it's going to be kind of hard to be better than the first version of it that people liked so much when it was first debuted, I guess.
Does Utley grow into a defensive tackle, or do they plan to bring him along with the likes of West and Bailey? AP, Utley's going to be a defensive tackle, right?
I mean, I think he's probably going to grow into that, yes. I mean, he's a big boy. So, again, a lot of it will depend on, kind of where they want to get him to. But, I think he's got options.
Do we kick the tires on Christian Garrett or others since House is the only defensive tackle on the board, especially since Georgia is the perceived favorite for 2 5-star defensive tackles?
Yeah, they're going to continue to kick the tires on all those guys. So, I mean, Tennessee's, they've called Justice Terry. I mean, that doesn't mean they'll get him to campus, but I mean, they're not going, they're not just going to sit around and go, we'll just, we're good. They'll keep working, see what happens.
Nashville 615. Here's a scenario: Nico wins the Heisman, but Tennessee goes 9-3 and misses the playoffs. Rob, what happened in that scenario?
They lost 3 games. I mean, I don't know. I mean, they lost to Oklahoma, Georgia, and Alabama would be what I would say. I mean,
Would it be similar to LSU last year, where you had a great quarterback, scored points, defense couldn't stop anybody.
Yeah, but I just don't see that scenario happening.
I don't see the defense being. I mean, if Nico wins the Heisman, Tennessee's in the playoffs. I mean, I don't think that scenario exists where they get.
Yeah, I don't think that scenario just does. It just doesn't. You can't. To me, you can't connect the dots on how to get to all those functional points.
Yeah, Tennessee's defensive line won't let this defense be horrible. That's my opinion on that. Let's go to Athrun. Weekend upcoming commitments update ? AP.
Explain it again.
Weekend upcoming commitments update ?
I still don't even understand what he's asking.
Who's committing this weekend?
Who's committing this weekend?
Where are the
Vols standing?
Shady Hayward is committing Saturday. The Vols are in a great spot. Desan Brame will go sometime before then, and the Vols are in a great spot. And outside of that, I don't know if you see anybody else commit this weekend. I mean, I don't think DeJuan Morris would flip this weekend. I think that the Tennessee will have to, check a few more boxes since, they're a little late to the party here as far as pushing for DeJuan. But I still think Tennessee's got a great chance to flip him in the end.
Is Jeremiah's Hurd a contributor next season, or will he need 2 years just to learn how to play offensive line?
Don't know. It's too early to ask that. I don't know.
But we can all agree, very much developmental, right?
Yeah. I mean, not done a whole lot on the offensive line.
Yeah. Cam Seldon still looking like full go by game 1, ? Or will it be a little bit after that?
That's, to me, still too early to know. I think we'll know more August 14th. So talk to me in, 20 days.
Asked this question along a similar line last week. Has anyone talked to Paul about Markel being in the new video game? I imagine it's pretty cool having your kid in a game and being able to play with him. Have any of you guys talked to Paul about that? That is pretty neat.
I've not talked to Paul about that. But, Paul's always lurking, around the general's quarters. But I'm sure he is proud of Markel.
Here's Markel's story. He used to be in the gym every morning, like 6 a.m., 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. before school. I guess this was his senior year. I don't know. Every single morning, though. Shout out Markel. Paid off.
Believe in the Hype 2023. David Sanders, where are we with that guy right now?
I think Tennessee continues to be in a really good spot. I will continue to reiterate that. Nothing has changed my mind on that. Tennessee makes a ton of sense for a ton of different reasons.
We're through 11 questions, 18 minutes into this podcast. I think that's a Volquest record. Let's go to Imoore, and I think Volken had a similar question. What's the craziest recruiting story that you can remember that involved a recruit not choosing Tennessee or another school because of some bizarre deal breaker? Rob, can you think of one in basketball or football that you remember that was kind of bizarre?
Yeah, I guess the statute of limitations is run out on this. Tobias Harris's dad told Bruce Pearl that another McDonald's All-American named Javon Pickney who was coming to Tennessee, that they were both from New York. Tobias's dad told Bruce Pearl that Tobias was not going to come if they took Javon Pinkston, and so Bruce had an assistant coach call the kid and tell him they weren't taking him, and he was a McDonald's All-American who went to Villanova. It's pretty crazy. And this was also the week of signing day in November.
It's a good one.
Grant, you got one?
I think kind of the opposite direction of that. Dalton Connect had a canceled flight out of here, which allowed him basically another 24 hours in Knoxville. If I'm remembering this correctly, maybe Rob will have to correct me, but that kind of helped seal the deal for Tennessee. I think he might have still ended up at Tennessee if that flight had gone out like normal, but he was here for another 24 hours, and I do think that made a difference. So it's a pretty important canceled flight in the history of Tennessee basketball if that did indeed make the difference.
Knowing the two of them, Grant, that was probably 24 hours where Rick got to tell Dalton where his elbow was on his jump shot in Pratt Pavilion.
You got one in football, AP?
I do not. That's not too many of the statute of limitations are still rolling on that.
Yeah, like I said, I've got a couple. I feel like that, but the one I just ripped off was about, I think, what's Tobias been in the league 15 years now.
Well,
Close.
It doesn't really matter because Tobias has got $300 million, and so if we're telling a story on him, oh well.
It's not a story. I don't think I would would bet Tobias didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Let's go to JVols 95. What do you think is our struggle with finding a center for the future? Feel like we've tried a few guys there and they've all failed.
It's a great question. I don't really know what the holdup is there. I do know that in talking to Cooper some, when we sat down with him for SEC Media Days, Cooper was very encouraged by William Satterwhite. Thinks he can really can be a really good player at that position. And Cooper doesn't hand out compliments very often, so he was very complimentary. A lot of the young linemen, but specifically Satterwhite at center.
We got plenty more questions to get into, but first, let's get a word from our friends over at Exterior Home Solutions.
Severe weather can strike at any time in East Tennessee, and Mother Nature can do severe damage to the first and most important line of defense that you and your family have against Mother Nature, and that is your roof. Whenever she strikes, make sure that you call the people that I call. Make sure you trust the people that I trust, and that's my friends at Exterior Home Solutions, because they're more than friends, they're truly family.
That phone number for Exterior Home Solutions for a free estimate. Pick up the phone and dial 865-524-5888 or go online at exteriorhomesolutions.com. All right, back into the questions. NWGAVOL says, rank these freshmen in terms of the biggest projected impact in their freshman season. Here are the freshmen: Boo Carter, Peyton Lewis, Mike Matthews, Jordan Ross, Edwin Spillman. AP, you want to give a go at this?
Give them to me again.
So Boo Carter, Peyton Lewis, Mike Matthews, Jordan Ross, Edwin Spillman. I think it might be in that order potentially, but you'd flip the last two. I mean, Ross might see some time, AP, and some packages for sure, but I mean, his first practice in fall camp will be his first practice with Tennessee. He wasn't here in spring. Spillman will be playing catch-up for sure, but I mean, Boo's going to play a lot. When healthy, you would imagine Peyton Lewis is going to help out in that backfield, and maybe you flip Mike Matthews and Peyton Lewis, but
that's what I would do. I would do Boo, Matthews, Lewis, Ross, Spillman, and that's again providing everybody else in front of them stays healthy. Like Spillman could end up going higher if somebody got hurt at linebacker.
Yeah, and Ross and Spillman will play special teams, so I mean we're kind of taking that out of the equation. Let's go to football time in Tennessee. Where does Tennessee go in short yardage situations? We struggled in this area last year. Is there someone the staff could use like Princeton Fant in 2022?
I'm not sure there is a Swiss Army knife because, like, Ethan Davis is a tight end. Kitzelman tight end. Like, the thing about Princeton Fant was, Princeton Fant played receiver, he played linebacker, he played running back, and tight ends. I mean, he had played so much that it was easy to make him a Swiss Army knife because he truly kind of had been in his Tennessee career.
And there were a couple of practices when they were doing mesh at the very beginning in fall camp when Princeton Fant was taking handoff. So, I mean, we saw that. I'm just, at least in spring practice, we haven't seen any tight ends or anybody like that taking handoffs with the running backs. Rob, I would say probably Cam Seldon. I mean, if you're healthy, Cam Seldon's a big physical back, and I think he'd be a good option, or just whoever's the running back in the game at that point in time.
Yeah, I would think Seldon. I mean, if you really, if it's 4th and inches and you're, sending in a package, would be my guess.
I mean, he's listed at 222, I think, on the official roster. Don't quote me on that. I think it's 222, something like that. But, I mean, my takeaway from the Citrus Bowl was that was a big kid then. I would assume he's a bigger kid now.
AP, Khalifa Keith, is he in that conversation, or does he have to prove more of just being able to play running back in a game before he's any type of package type player?
I think he's got to prove it.
Pillsbury Vol says, this is a fun one. Jeff Hall, James Wilhoit, Chase McGrath, all incredible kicks. Which was most impactful at the time, and which one will get 75-year-old Hub story and a future feature story? Go Vols.
Man, that's a great question. I don't know that there's a wrong. I mean, I don't know you can pick one.
I do. It's simple. It's McGrath. The better kickers were Wilhoit and Hall.
You think,
but how monumental the kick was after being in the desert for so long to be
national championship, though. I would put Wilhoit's third. I think. I mean, and I think you argue between. I mean, I get it, AP. I mean, I'm not saying you're. I mean, I totally get it. Dixieland Delight, field storming, but if Jeff Hall doesn't make that kick in Syracuse, I mean, they don't. 98 doesn't happen.
I think McGrath's got to be the one. 15-game losing skid to Alabama at home. What do you think, Grant?
I side with Rob. I thought that's where AP was going because one led to a national championship and the others did not. And I understand fully how big the Chase McGrath kick was, how big that moment was, what it meant for Tennessee football, Josh Heupel. But one led to a championship and one led to the Orange Bowl eventually in 11 wins. That's huge for that program and where they were and how quickly they got there with Heupel in the second year. But a national title is a national title.
I mean, think if they hadn't won in 98. I mean, think about that, how long the drought would be.
Wilhoit's kick, I think, is definitely third on this list, though. I would agree with that. SlappyVol says under or over. So let's play a little over-under here. How will Nico's total yards and total touchdowns compare to Hendon's and Joe's? What is a successful season stats-wise? So here's the reference for Hendon in 2021. 3,565 yards and 36 touchdowns. Do we see Nico going over or under that total this season?
I mean, I'll say under just because. I mean, that was a historically good year. I mean, I won't be shocked if he tops that. But I mean, Peyton didn't have a better year than that statistically. I mean, nobody's on the Nico hype train like I am, but I think you might want to pump the brakes on that one just a little bit. I mean, statistically, I mean, I don't have it in front of me. Grant, you know stuff like this. I mean, that's one of the top 3 or 4 seasons in history for a Tennessee quarterback.
Yeah, and
on the metrics you're using.
I think Nico has that kind of upside. I think it's unfair to step in and say you got to be Hendon Hooker 2022 right off the bat. I think the boring answer, but probably the correct answer, is he's probably going to have better numbers than Joe had in last season. He's probably going to have worse numbers than Hendon had in 2022, and that middle ground is fine for a kid as a redshirt freshman in his first year as the program's starting quarterback.
Well, Hendon's numbers in 22 are actually less than 21 because he missed, I guess, a game and a half. Yeah. But okay. I agree with you guys. Joe's numbers last year, 3,112 yards, 27 total touchdowns. I can see Nico getting over that. You going to say something, AP?
Well, I was just going to say, he doesn't have to be Hendon because I think the defense in 24 will be way better than it was in 22. And that's where you make up for it, right? It's kind of like last year. You weren't as good in the passing game, but you were dynamite in the running game. So thus it kind of, offensively, you still were able to have, your moments.
So if we rephrase that question, if you were to set the over-under for Nico's touchdowns and total yards, maybe where would you put that, Grant?
Total yards? Oh, my gosh. You'd have to read off those Hendon numbers for me again. I don't know.
Hendon in 2021, 3,565 yards, 36 touchdowns.
I'd go over under probably 27 touchdowns. Passing? We talking passing or total touchdowns?
Let's go total. Total.
I would probably go total 32. I don't know. AP, what you got?
I'm not good at this at all. This is not a strength of mine at all. I think I would say over 33 touchdowns total would be a good year. And again, though, I think a lot of it depends on like how they use him. Look at the bowl game. I mean, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. I mean, how do they use him? Because early on, is Selden back? Is he not back? Where they at the health of the running back spot? How much do they run him against NC State or Oklahoma early in the year? And then how much does he just use his legs on his own, when things break down?
OneVolFan asks, who had the hardest recruiting job? Or no, who had the hardest rebuilding job? Coach Majors back in 1977 or Josh Heupel when he took over from Pruitt with the massive amount of players leaving in 2021?
It's easy to say Heupel with recency bias. I think there are two different deals. Tennessee just had been just not up to par in football. They weren't dealing with any of the extracurricular stuff off the field when Johnny took over, Rob. And so, I think it's hard to truly compare them. But, again, I think it's the Heupel stuff's so recent and so in your face. I think people forget, Johnny walked in here to a program that has just been kind of bleh.
Well, had lost to North Texas. I mean, ancient history, but man, I mean, the landscape, has changed so much. I mean, I think it's tough to compare the challenges.
The conference was different way back then.
Yeah. I mean, you're talking about a 10-team league and, the probation stuff. I would, it's hard to compare them, but man, I would almost say Heupel just because of the transfer portal. But then, I'd say that. And the next thing I'm thinking, Heupel also got to use the transfer portal, it wasn't like it was just a one-way street with that. So you just have to pick your poison on that one. I mean, I'd say neither one of those guys inherited an easy task.
I think one of the differences to me is the timing of Heupel having it be in January and how awful. I mean, you really couldn't pick a worse time to try to take over a program with everything that was going on at the time and what had happened the previous however long it had been, a couple of weeks, and since Pruitt and everybody was let go and everybody entered the portal and all that stuff. I mean, Johnny was coming off in 76 a 12-0 record and a national title at Pitt, right? Am I mistaken there?
That makes me think of something else, Grant, about Heupel. I mean, I wouldn't say people were negative about Josh, but I mean, it wasn't like, they were holding parades for him. Whereas when Johnny came marching home, I mean, you talk about galvanizing, people wrote books about it, I mean, you talk about galvanizing a fan base. I mean, so, I wouldn't say that necessarily made Johnny's task easier, but I mean, he had Big Orange Nation behind him from day one.
Over under 5.5 of these 6 recruits. Will Tennessee get over under these 6 right here? 5.5 is the number.
Jenny Hayward. It's my favorite part of the podcast.
Hayward, Onis, Perlotti, Brame, Morris, Sanders. So essentially, is Tennessee going to get them all, or is Tennessee going to miss 1 or 2 of those?
Oh, see you guys. I would tell you they're going to get them all, and it's because I think they will flip to Juan Morris. It just makes too much sense. I don't think the kid really wants to go to Southern Cal. It's a long way to go for his parents to come watch him play when he can stay closer to home. I've said for a while, I think Tennessee's in the best position to land David Sanders based off of me talking to a lot of people. I'm not going to come off that. That's not to say he can't pick somewhere else, because he certainly can. But I'm going to stick to my guns on that one, and the rest. The one that I actually have the least amount of confidence in out of the 6 is Jaden Perlotti, because again, he said all the right things coming out. Of June, but yet here we are almost to August and he's not done anything. And so like that one to me, I see the crystal balls and the predictions and here and there, but again, until he pulls the trigger, it's nothing. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. To me, out of all those 6, the one I think would be most up in the air, and for me, is Jaden Perlotti.
ImissDenariusMoore has got a couple of questions here. Coaches oftentimes tout their big finds in terms of recruiting, like Butch Jones with Antonio Brown. What is y'all's big find? Could it be a prediction on a commit like AP and Eric Berry? A recruit you thought would blow up and they did? A guy you predicted as a breakout before everyone else? Can you guys think of any situations where you were right before anybody else?
I mean, I remember watching Zakai Ziegler in the fall of whatever year that was, 2022, specifically a scrimmage at Thompson Bowling. I guess it was a Saturday, like an open practice, like thinking this guy's not a redshirt candidate. This guy's not somebody that's just going to sit at the end of the bench. Like this guy is going to play. And I don't think I was first on that. I don't think I was the only one thinking that. But that was one that stands out. Like this guy's, because they brought him in here to be a developmental redshirt kind of freshman, sits on the end of the bench, doesn't do anything, and you could tell right away, like, this guy's different. He's going to play. He's going to produce. He's completely comfortable and ready for this level of basketball.
Is it too early to call this recruiting strategy for this year a success? meaning they had delayed and bunched together a bunch of the official visits. I know there's still a long way to go with several commitments on the horizon, but sort of a check-in moment. What do you think the impact of this staff's moves have been? Do you think that this is a successful recruiting class, AP?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a successful recruiting class without David Sanders. I think Sanders is the one that takes you over the top, and then it's just avalanche, right? I don't think they did anything different this year, like with the way they handled things and how they structured the visits, that they didn't do last year. I think it just boils down to the relationships were probably a little stronger. Another year in the system, another year in Knoxville, and they gelled with some kids the right way. And kids, in a guy like Travis Smith's case, I mean, like he held off other schools and waited to take that Tennessee visit, and that helped Tennessee. Whereas like had he pulled the trigger in mid-June, Tennessee didn't get him to campus. They're not sitting here with him. So I think it just boils down to another year, here in Knoxville, another year in the SEC, and understanding what it takes to get the job done.
Butch Jones's mailbox update on Cam Sparks' recruitment. Seems like he's been a big priority the last 2 years now. Haven't heard anything in a while. Austin.
Well, you haven't heard anything because he's not a priority. I mean, he's not a take at Tennessee. Has not been for 5 months, I guess, thereabouts. What are we? We're on August, so all of July, all of June, May, April. Over 4.5 months. I mean, had he committed at the first part of March, Tennessee would have probably taken it. He wanted to wait, so Tennessee moved on. And I think that's how you have to treat some kids. Like you have to go off your evaluation and go from there. And for a kid that was a top 100 kid 365 days ago, he's not anymore. And he didn't take any visits in the month of June. And that is, if you're a big time guy and you don't take visits in June, that is pretty eye-opening because everybody takes visits in June. So I hope the kid balls out this fall and schools come flocking back in for him because I mean, kid passes the eye test. He just needs a really strong senior season.
Got a couple more here. This one's really fun to kind of talk about and visualize. 4th and goal from the 7. Touchdown wins the game. Who are you throwing the ball to on this current roster? Rob Grant, who are you throwing the ball to?
Brew McCoy, isn't it? I mean, is it even
Brew's the name that came to me.
Go box
Brew because of that Florida touchdown. What was that? 2 seconds left before halftime, 2022. I don't know if that was 4th down or what that situation was.
It was not 4th down, but it was all set up by that Ramel Keaton catch.
Yeah,
that's true too. But I mean that catch, that drive, that moment, that was a big one.
And before that, it was the 3rd and 10 when Hendon did the sidestep when he was sacked, and I think threw it to Princeton Fant for the first down right at the marker.
By the way, I always mean to bring this up when we talk about stuff, and I always forget. And then I see the clip again, and I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to remember that. Is the worst officiated ball spot of all time not the Ramel Keaton, the first catch after the missed kick by Alabama? He gets to the 48, and they put the ball down at the 50, which I know doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but still, like had that ball not got across the goalpost by, like, let's say a yard, it's a huge deal. Like, no one ever talks about that because Tennessee won the game and people just don't care, right? Like, but like, what a terrible spot by 2 yards.
I don't even remember that. I was so busy deleting and rewriting 4 quick takes.
Oh,
at that
I
point
understand.
in time,
But like next time you see
Eric was like, Rob, I'm sure. Calm down.
The thing that always jumps out when I watch that clip or those highlights, I guess, is Hendon Hooker double clutching.
Yeah,
on that throw to Brew McCoy, and how it was a bang bang moment there where the ball gets to him, and then as soon as the ball gets to him, he gets hit. Like that whole sequence was just kind of insanity, chaos.
Yep.
All right, we'll get to 2 more posters here, a couple of questions in each. Port City Vol, if Cooper gets injured, who is Heupel bringing in off the bench to start at center for the next play? AP, I think right now it's Dane Davis, but eventually maybe it's William Satterwhite.
Yeah, I think it's Dane Davis. I mean, I don't think they would be willing to turn the reins over to Satterwhite yet. Like that. Probably not even this year, but maybe, just depending on kind of how he progresses in fall camp.
Which lineman on this roster could potentially replace Cooper at center next season? William Satterwhite, Bison Lang, and then you hope a guy like Nick Moore or somebody in this class could be one of those guys that steps in the future.
Yeah, I think a lot of it, again, whether they go to the portal or not, to me, will be dependent on the progression of William Satterwhite.
All right. Volume Shooters got a couple of ones, and we'll end on this one. With Anson Siebert coming to campus as such a highly touted prospect, but with the alleged arm stuff from this past spring, do you see him contributing much in 2025? Right now, at this point, no. I don't see him contributing much in 2025. I know he dealt with some stuff this past spring. Such a high ceiling. I mean, he was obviously, MLB Pipeline had him as like the 111th ranked prospect. Really, really tremendous talent, but I don't see him being a big contributor in 2025. But you get him to campus, obviously. You got a couple of years where you can definitely utilize him, so he'll be a big get later on. Things can always change, but right now I'll say probably not a huge, huge contributor. Assuming Tennessee gets Hayward, Sanders, Perlotti, Brame, Onis, and Morris, what positions could Tennessee be looking to add in this fall while doing the fall evals, or is it mostly portal after these 6?
D-line, defensive tackle.
And then lastly, what's the most likely scenario? Vols get Petty and Gaston, Vols get Petty but no Gaston, Vols get Gaston but no Petty, or Vols get neither?
I don't know. I would probably say Vols get neither, but the second would be Vols get Petty and no Gaston.
Okay, I was gonna say there was like 6 scenarios right there, so you gotta get one. All right, appreciate you guys for sending in all your questions. You do each and every single week. If I didn't get to your questions, we apologize, but thanks so much for all the recruiting, baseball, football stuff. Got fall camp just right around the corner, starting on Wednesday, July the 31st. Media Day is on that Tuesday. We got plenty of recruiting coverage this weekend to look forward to, hopefully, and tons of other stuff happening right now at Volquest.com. If you are watching on YouTube right now, you see the promo that's put on the screen, $1 for 2 months. $1 for 2 months. You put in that promo code on the screen right now, and you can hang out with us over on the General's Quarters. For Grant Ramey, Rob Lewis, Austin Price, I'm Eric Kane. Thanks as always to our friends Exterior Home Solutions for being the presenting sponsor of this show, and we'll talk to you next time right here on the Volquest Podcast.